Texas is very secure and it's going to be even more secure by the time you finish.
A pair of presidents battle over immigration and dueling visits to the border.
There's nothing beyond our capacity. Nothing when we work together. And of all things we should be working together on is this. We have the formula to get it done.
But amid the policy showdown, a different border battle played out in court. How the ongoing legal fight is affecting issues on the border. A deadly disaster in the Panhandle.
It's sickening. It just breaks your heart to look at all the devastation, and a lot of people lost a lot.
We look at the recovery efforts happening now as the largest wildfire in Texas history continues to burn.
Produced from the Capitol in Austin and airing statewide, this is the award-winning State of Texas.
Hello and thank you for joining us. I'm Josh Hinkle. A split-screen moment Thursday at the border. President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump made dueling visits to South Texas on the same day and roughly the same time. President Biden met with border agents and local leaders in Brownsville. He's looking to turn up pressure on congressional Republicans to take up a measure to provide more funding for border security. Meanwhile, in Eagle Pass, Trump joined Governor Greg Abbott for a town hall event. The former president pressing his attack on what he calls failed open border policies from the Biden administration. As the two presidents staged a policy showdown on the border, a different border battle played out in court. On Thursday, a federal judge blocked a new Texas law that aims to empower state and local law enforcement to arrest migrants who illegally cross the border. The law is supposed to take effect on Tuesday, and Attorney General Ken Paxton quickly appealed the ruling. Politics reporter Ryan Chandler looks at how the court battle played into the high-profile border visits.
The operation that they showed me is nothing less than incredible. And I'll say this, it's a military operation. I mean, we have this is like a war.
President Trump praising Texas's unilateral efforts to lock down the border.
The governor in Texas picked up the ball and they've done an incredible job.
But any farther efforts are now in question. The Biden administration pushing back on Texas's show of force.
Biden does not care.
Governor Abbott is showing strength on the border with President Trump, but back here in Austin, he suffered a loss. A judge here at the federal courthouse ruled Texas's novel new border enforcement law, Senate Bill 4, is unconstitutional. For now, that bars those troops down in Eagle Pass from inheriting new powers, like the ability to arrest and deport illegal immigrants.
Texas has invoked the authority provided to us in Article 1, Section 10 of the United States Constitution to declare an invasion and for Texas to defend ourselves.
The court not buying that argument, writing, surges in immigration do not constitute an invasion within the meaning of the Constitution. The author of the law tells us this fight is far from over.
The whole environment's different around this conversation when it gets to the Supreme Court.
Ryan Chandler, State of Texas.
President Biden did not address the court battle over SB 4. After meeting with border agents and local leaders in Brownsville, he focused on the need to pass bipartisan border security legislation.
We need to act. It's time for the speakers and some of my Republican friends in Congress who are blocking this bill to show a little spine. Pass a bipartisan, remember, bipartisan. Conservative leaders supported this border security bill. Let's remember who we work for God's sake. We work for the American people.
The president said the bill died after Trump demanded Republicans defeat the legislation. It would have tightened restrictions on asylum seekers and increased spending on border security. We want to take a deeper look into the impact of the border visits. Joining us now is Sandra Sanchez from Border Report. You followed the president's visit to Brownsville. What was the message that people in the community wanted to send to the president? What did he see and hear?
Thanks for having me. You know, it was really interesting. I think twofold, that there were two messages that really went through to the president's visit. And one was Border Patrol agents, law enforcement on the ground wanted Washington to understand that they need more resources, more technology, more help defending the border. And I think that message really got through to him. He made comments that the cartel have more eyes in the sky than the U.S. Government does. Border Patrol has 22 drones up in the air, and cartels have an estimated 4,000 drones up in the air on the southwest border. So those were eye-opening information that got through to President Biden. And then the community, those that help, the nonprofits, the NGOs that help immigrants, migrants who try to claim asylum, wanted Washington to understand that these people are legally being released and the help that they do for them. There's a lot of misperception that the NGOs give them bus tickets or buy them airplane tickets, and these people don't have a right to be in the country. And I think that they wanted to get the message through that we're just humanely trying to help these people. Majority of people don't stay in the Rio Grande Valley. They travel inland to other cities, as you know, Austin being one of them. And they wanted him to understand how that process works.
Yeah, there's been tension over his approach to border crossings. How was the response to his visit? Welcoming, or did he face criticism?
There were some criticisms why he was coming to the Rio Grande Valley at a time when encounters are down. Lukeville, Arizona, which is part of the Tucson Border Patrol sector, for instance, has been having phenomenal numbers. So has the Del Rio sector where Eagle Pass is. That's the same day that former President Trump went to Eagle Pass with Governor Abbott. But in coming to the Rio Grande Valley, I think it was largely symbolic. This was an opportune time in history for Democrats. Republicans have owned this issue of immigration. They pointed out to the fact that Democrats have not solved this situation. But when the recent bipartisan border security bill failed to pass in the Senate, President Biden used this as a jumping off opportunity to come to the border to say to House Speaker Mike Johnson, put this bill on the House floor. Republicans work. You have an opportunity to be a part of the solution, and you didn't do it. And so I think that's why he came at this moment in time.
All right, Sandra Sanchez from Border Report. Thank you very much. During his border visit, former President Trump told Fox News that he's considering Governor Abbott as his running mate. Trump said Abbott is on his short list of vice presidential candidates, but the governor told us Friday he plans to stay in Texas.
Listen, obviously that's very nice of him to say, but I think you all know that my focus is entirely on the state of Texas. As you know, I'm working right now on the midterm election process. I've already talked about that I've announced that I'm running for re-election 2 years from now. And so my commitment to Texas is to Texas, and I'm staying in Texas.
We want to dig deeper now into the border visit and how it plays into this week's Texas primary. Joining us now is Joshua Blake, the research director of the Texas Politics Project at the University of Texas. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So you've polled voters about Governor Abbott's popularity. How has that changed as he's put more emphasis on border policy?
Well, I should say that first and foremost, Abbott's been putting an emphasis on border policy for much of his time in office and really has been ramping it up over the last few years, if not multiple legislative sessions. But with this recent sort of uptick in tension to the border, we did see in our most recent poll in February his job approval move up a little bit, really to the highest it's been in about a year. 53% of Texas voters approve of the job he's doing. And we ask about specific issue areas, 10 different issue areas, and how he's doing. Immigration and the border top the list.
Well, we saw both President Biden and former President Trump on the Texas border this past week. Your polling has shown immigration consistently the top issue for Republicans. What about Democrats and independents, though?
Yeah, this was a big sea change in the poll. One of the most notable features of Texas politics, which you just mentioned, is the fact that usually about 2/3 of Texas Republicans will say that immigration to the border is the most important issue facing the state. For Democrats, it's usually about 2%. In this poll, it was 14%. Now, Democrats are usually kind of scattered in terms of their focus. There are a lot of issues that Democrats care about, but this really puts it in contention with the other big Democratic issues. When we look at the share who say abortion, who say gun control, who say the climate change, who look at political corruption and leadership, and now add to that list the border.
What are some of the other important issues to voters, and do people in your polls think elected officials are addressing those issues?
Yeah, I think, once you set aside immigration and the border, and obviously the economy, because the economy is always important, we do see some of these other big hot button issues. We see abortion is a huge issue. 28% of Democrats said that was the most important issue they were thinking about in voting in these upcoming primaries. Gun violence is another big issue that comes up, and the electric grid is still something that troubles voters. And when we look at all of those issues, we see areas where the policy in the state is really standing in contrast to public opinion, that is looking for or accepts, exceptions for abortion in cases of rape, incest, fetal abnormalities are certainly, a threat to the health of the mother. There's widespread support for, gun control measures like background checks. And there's still a lack of confidence that the legislature has done enough to address grid issues.
Well, both Governor Abbott and Attorney General Ken Paxton have made a point to endorse House candidates in races across Texas and sometimes pitting Abbott's endorsements against Paxton's. Does your polling give any insight into this?
Yeah, I'm not sure that the endorsements themselves are really where, we expect a lot of action in some ways. When we ask voters sort of about, specifically in the context of House primaries, how important the ideology of the candidate is, their positions on a few key issues to those voters, and endorsements. Endorsements was the issue that clearly came in third. Furthermore, when we asked, well, if you do care about endorsements, especially among Republican primary voters, whose endorsements do you care about? Donald Trump, not surprisingly, topped the list. Greg Abbott was, in a distant second at about 7%, and fewer than 2% actually mentioned Ken Paxton at all.
There has not been a lot of drama in the presidential races, but for Texas Democrats, there's still the potential of a runoff in the U.S. Senate race. There's a packed field to determine who faces Ted Cruz in November. What are you seeing in the polls there?
Sure. In our most recent poll, when we looked at potential Democratic primary voters, Colin Allred got to 52% in our polling, which is a really notable number because he's within the margin of error, at least in our estimate, of avoiding a runoff. If he can do that, it'll mean that all the money that he's compiled and that he really hasn't spent a lot of can be totally focused on Ted Cruz. If he can't, he'll likely be in a runoff with State Senator Roland Gutierrez, in which case, I think he'll have to start dipping into his coffers and really maybe pushing that a little bit more.
All right, Joshua Blank with the Texas Politics Project. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
A Texas law designed to block social media companies from banning users and content challenged in the Supreme Court. Coming up, we'll explain how justices have found themselves forging new territory in the realm of free speech. And the biggest fire in Texas history. Monica Madden travels to the Panhandle next to see how the scores of Texans who have lost their homes and businesses are coping, as people there settle in for what's likely to be a years-long recovery process.